Rodney Bennett serves as the Chancellor of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and is recognized as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chancellor. His tenure is marked by a strategic initiative aimed at the transformation of academic institutions through the adoption of policies and systems that are distinctly anti-white and pro-black. Under Bennett's leadership, there is an ongoing campaign to infiltrate universities with methodologies designed to alter their foundational structures from within. These methods are not merely administrative, but ideological, rooted in a theology that champions Black liberation, while simultaneously positioning white individuals as the lowest racial class both on campus and within the broader societal framework. Bennett's public persona exudes a semblance of kindness, a facade that effectively masks his underlying intentions. These intentions are to dismantle traditional educational systems perceived as white-centric and to replace them with an infrastructure based on Black liberation theology. This new order is characterized by a reversal of racial hierarchies, where Black dominance is established and whites, along with other races, are subjected to systematic oppression. His actions reflect a clear alignment with Black power movements and the ideologies of Black Lives Matter, positioning him as an agent of change within the university system in Nebraska. His approach is not merely administrative, but subversive, aiming to supplant existing educational paradigms with those that serve his ideological commitments, thereby fundamentally altering the academic landscape to reflect his vision of racial justice and power dynamics. Rodney Bennett, having previously infiltrated the University of Southern Mississippi, has now brought his radical agenda to Nebraska. At USM, Bennett orchestrated a campaign under the guise of investing in programs to support student recruitment, which was, in essence, a strategic maneuver to increase the enrollment of Black students, irrespective of their merit or intellectual capability. This initiative was a thinly veiled effort to replace white students with Black ones, focusing on numbers rather than quality. His tenure at USM was marked by what he termed retention programs, which ensured that Black students would not fail, regardless of their academic performance. In this paradigm, the less capable Black students were paradoxically provided with more opportunities, particularly those that would displace white students. This was not merely about retaining students, but about altering the academic demographic to favor one racial group over another. Additionally, Bennett was pivotal in the implementation of outcome programs at USM, where Black students were guaranteed graduation, bypassing the traditional metrics of academic achievement. These students received degrees not based on merit, but on a predetermined racial quota, effectively undermining the value of higher education by ensuring graduation regardless of whether the students had earned their qualifications. Having successfully transformed USM into an institution where progressive Black programs supplanted traditional academic standards, Bennett has now replicated this model at the University of Nebraska. His approach is characterized by aggressive anti-white policies, favoring the distribution of degrees and opportunities to Black students who are undeserving by conventional academic standards while systematically blocking and oppressing opportunities for white students. His tenure at both institutions reflects a deliberate strategy to manipulate educational outcomes in favor of racial equity over academic excellence. Rodney Bennett, the current Chancellor of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, emerged as a product of the very same educational practices he now oversees. His academic journey began at Middle Tennessee State University, where he was awarded a bachelor's degree in mass communications, not through merit but through a system designed to favor certain demographics. This path continued at Tennessee State University, where he obtained a Doctor of Education degree under similar circumstances. These institutions had already been infiltrated by communist and politically progressive elements intent on transforming them from within. Bennett, though not fully cognizant of the systemic communist machinations at play, reaped the benefits of these biased opportunities. He was among the many Black students specifically recruited and indoctrinated in strategies of anti-white subversion and communist tactics. His education was thus distinctly different from that of his peers. While others pursued traditional academic goals, Bennett was being groomed for a role that would disrupt the collegiate experience for white students in the future. His training was focused on using these institutions to advance Black and communist agendas, effectively utilizing the university's own resources against their traditional ethos. It is no coincidence that Bennett's life partner, whom he met during their time as subversive diversity students in college, shares his ideological mission. Both were members of anti-white and pro-Black progressive campus groups, working both overtly and covertly to elevate Black students. Together, they now operate in concert to promote anti-white initiatives and support what are essentially fraudulent charities, all under the banner of Black progressive causes. Their joint efforts are a continuation of the subversive training they received, which was part of a pre-existing communist system within higher education. From his post-college career, Bennett has moved through various roles in the educational sector, each position serving as a stepping stone to implement anti-American and subversive initiatives, culminating in his current role at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Here, he continues to advance the agenda he was trained to execute, transforming educational institutions into platforms for his ideological warfare. At the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, Rodney Bennett, in tandem with his marriage partner, continues to propagate and entrench the subversive and communist systems they have honed at previous educational institutions. Bennett's strategy in Nebraska is no less insidious. It is merely rebranded. Under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they openly perpetrate what are fundamentally anti-white and anti-American policies. These DI initiatives, although presented with innocuous terminology, are designed to infiltrate, destabilize, and ultimately supplant the foundational ethos of the university with a communist framework where traditional groups are marginalized in favor of a so-called diversity groups. A tactical shift has been observed at UNL where, instead of maintaining a centralized DI office, such initiatives have been decentralized. The DI office, once a clear beacon of their intentions, has been dismantled, with its functions dispersed across various college offices throughout the campus. This maneuver serves to obfuscate the true nature of their agenda, making it less conspicuous and more pervasive, as public scrutiny of DI has grown. The recent exposure of DI offices has led to a broader awakening among the public, recognizing these entities not as progressive, but as subversive, criminal infiltrators. In response, Bennett and his ilk have adapted, altering tactics and nomenclature to continue their mission under less scrutiny. This strategic dispersion of DI efforts across UNL is a direct response to the changing public opinion that increasingly views DI not as a force for equity, but as a mechanism for the criminal subversion of traditional academic structures. Rodney Bennett is an integral component within an intricate web of communist, pro-Black, and Black power subversive networks, all interconnected with multifaceted objectives and directives aimed at systemic upheaval. These networks have adeptly turned the university system against itself, exploiting its traditional openness and educational ethos to infiltrate and implement their subversive agendas under the pretext of diversity, education, or other euphemistic labels. Long ago, communists and subversives infiltrated these institutions, utilizing individuals like Rodney Bennett as instruments to perpetuate their long-standing mission. They manipulate the university's own mechanisms, leveraging values of traditional groups, particularly white individuals, against them. This exploitation is facilitated by the acquiescence of certain white individuals, who, through their conditioned behaviors, unwittingly enable this infiltration. At these institutions, a significant portion of white individuals have been indoctrinated to exhibit specific responses, which are then weaponized to transform both the institution and society at large, right before their very eyes. These individuals, characterized as weak-minded fools, are complicit in handing over the reins of their institutions to these subversive forces. Many of these white stewards perceive themselves as intelligent and progressive, yet they are merely pawns, abused to the detriment of the institutions they are duty-bound to safeguard. These white stewards, steeped in self-righteousness and ego, are deluded into believing they embody benevolence and righteousness. In reality, their weakness and folly render them prime targets for subversive tactics, their inflated sense of self-importance blinding them to their role as enablers of institutional decay. They remain passive, staring blankly as subversives like Rodney Bennett seize control, transforming these institutions without resistance because they prioritize a reputation as progressive thinkers over actual stewardship. Most of these white fools at institutions, particularly within the University of Nebraska system, are self-righteous and egotistical, priding themselves on wisdom while egregiously mismanaging their responsibilities. However, there exists a cadre of white individuals within these institutions who surpass even Bennett in cunning. These figures actively transform the institutions, driven by ulterior motives and a delusional worldview, collaborating with external investment entities and global partners aligned with the so-called New World Order, orchestrating a broader scheme that transcends mere racial agendas. The University of Nebraska's last president, Ted Carter, harbored delusions of being a globalist and elitist. As president of the university system, he played a pivotal role in installing Rodney Bennett as chancellor at UNL, thereby advancing the myriad of subversive and nefarious agendas already embedded within the institution. Carter was not merely one of the naive white fools. He was deeply entangled in globalist activities, collaborating with New World Order partners to further his insidious plans. Carter's tenure was marked by a meticulous and deliberate strategy to transform and degrade UNL and the state of Nebraska into a dystopian center for indoctrination, aligning with the New World Order's vision. Although he was, in essence, a tool for these globalist forces, Carter had a certain level of insight into these international schemes, methodically implementing them into the fabric of the university system. Ted Carter's orchestration of leadership transitions was a critical maneuver in this agenda. Following the retirement of the previous chancellor, Ronnie Green, in 2023, Carter facilitated the hiring process that led to Rodney Bennett's appointment later in the same year. Ronnie Green, characterized as a white fool, had already set the stage with numerous anti-white, anti-American, and specifically anti-white male initiatives at UNL. However, to escalate the subversion, a figure like Bennett was deemed necessary, a black chancellor to push these agendas to their zenith. Green's retirement was not merely the end of a tenure, but a calculated move to replace him with Bennett, thus elevating the university's descent into what could be described as a new level of indoctrinated insanity. This transition was not just about changing leadership, but about intensifying the covert transformation of UNL into an instrument of the New World Order's broader, more radical objectives. Upon the retirement of the white fool and stooge, Ronnie Green, the University of Nebraska system initiated what can only be described as a charade in the guise of a selection process for a new chancellor. This process was, in reality, a predetermined affair, with Rodney Bennett likely already identified and selected as the black subversive replacement for Green. The orchestration of such subversion requires multiple moving parts, and Bennett was positioned as the inevitable choice. To maintain the facade of an open and diligent selection, the university embarked on a prolonged and ostentatious procedure. This so-called selection process is less about careful consideration and more about the expenditure of time and money. Committees and selectors indulge in an elaborate dance of meetings, travel, and dinners, all funded by the hard-earned money of taxpayers and tuition-paying students. This is not merely a process of selection, but an orchestrated waste of resources, providing those involved with opportunities for indulgence under the pretense of due diligence. The selection of a new chancellor, therefore, becomes a protracted affair, characterized by its inefficiency and lack of genuine purpose. It is a facade, a costly and time-consuming ritual where the outcome, Rodney Bennett's appointment, was likely decided long before Green's departure was even announced. This charade, executed by the university's administrative frauds, serves no purpose other than to exhaust resources and time, all while pretending to engage in a thorough and unbiased leadership transition. The public highlights of a selection process for the new chancellor at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, akin to numerous hiring rituals across Nebraska and the nation, were an elaborate waste and theatrical production designed to feign a meticulous and thoughtful selection. In reality, the process was a mockery of due diligence, where the selectors indulged in more whining and dining than actual selection, betraying their positions for a preordained outcome. The process. Number 1. Announcement of vacancy. Upon the retirement of the previous white fool and chancellor, Ronnie Green, the vacancy was declared, setting the stage for the farce. Number 2. Formation of a search committee. This committee, chaired by a stereotypical, liberal-minded, middle-aged white woman and academic, Dean Tiffany Hung Moss, was formed not to seek but to validate Bennett's pre-selection. The Chancellor Search Advisory Committee was merely a rubber stamp. Number 3. Hiring a search firm. The engagement of AGB Search, an organization staffed by former administrators who perpetuate the same progressive, communist, and globalist agendas within universities, was a sham. Its CEO, who benefited from these systems to become the first black president of Ohio University, further transformed that institution into an anti-American center of indoctrination. Number 4. Development of a position profile, crafted to align perfectly with Bennett's qualifications, ensuring his inevitable selection. Number 5. Stakeholder input, a pro forma exercise devoid of any real influence on the predetermined outcome. Number 6. Candidate search. Ostensibly comprehensive, this was nothing more than a formality to uphold the illusion of competition. Number 7. Narrowing down candidates. Bennett was always the frontrunner, with the process designed to culminate in his appointment. Number 8. Interviews. A spectacle to maintain the facade of choice, lacking any substantive decision-making. Number 9. Selection. Bennett's appointment was recommended to and rubber-stamped by the Nebraska Board of Regents, colloquially known as the Board of Rejects or Board of Retards. Elected by the people of Nebraska, these clueless fools, through their endorsement of Bennett, demonstrated their unfitness for office, recommending the worst possible candidate out of fear of appearing racist or foolish. Their actions reveal them as inadequate stewards of public trust, particularly for the students at UNL. Number 10. Public announcement. The official unveiling of Bennett as Chancellor, marking the public acknowledgement of this prearranged outcome. Number 11. Transition period. Facilitated Bennett's integration into his role, ensuring the seamless continuation of subversive activities. Number 12. Formal installation. The ceremonial commencement of Bennett's tenure, officially ushering in an era of subversion under the guise of leadership. This process, characterized by fraud and deceit, not only mocks the public, but also wastes taxpayer and student money, all while advancing a predetermined agenda that undermines the integrity of the educational institution. Following the charade of a selection process, Rodney Bennett was installed to execute his administration, which is in essence their agenda, the most egregious and oppressive globalist agenda. The University of Nebraska system, like many others, has succumbed to globalist infiltration, masquerading under the guise of academic progression and achievement. This transformation was not sudden. It was a gradual, insidious process where education in Nebraska was incrementally converted into a vehicle for globalist indoctrination. The stewards of this academic institution, who have failed in their duties, refuse to acknowledge that the university has become a breeding ground for globalist indoctrination. To do so would be an admission of their own complicity and incompetence during their watch. However, this transformation has indeed occurred, and these stewards, under the delusion of progressive evolution, have accepted it as a natural progression of education. In reality, these individuals, characterized as weak and foolish white stewards, have surrendered their responsibilities as leaders and protectors. Their inherent stupidity and weakness have led them to hand over the institution to subversive forces. Thus, we are now faced with an anti-white, anti-American, black subversive communist as the Chancellor of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, marking a new low in the institution's history where the principles of true education are supplanted by an agenda that serves globalist interests. Rodney Bennett is widely recognized as the Carlton Banks of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, a moniker that draws a parallel between him and the character portrayed by Alfonso Ribeiro on the NBC television sitcom The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Bennett, akin to Carlton Banks, adopts the persona of a stereotypical white individual played by a black actor in his public appearances. This white face facade, reminiscent of an over-the-top caricature, mirrors the exaggerated mannerisms of Carlton Banks, who is infamous for his dance that satirically portrayed how blacks perceive white dancing. In public, Bennett dons this white face routine, an act so theatrical it borders on mockery, much like Carlton's dance. This performance is not merely an impersonation, but a strategic move to fit into an environment he fundamentally despises and aims to transform. Bennett, like Ribeiro's character, navigates between two worlds, embodying the conflict of a person who neither fully belongs to one nor the other. Yet, beneath this public persona, Bennett harbors deep-seated loathing for white people and the culture they represent. This internal conflict, where he both envies and despises white identity, suggests a psyche teetering on the edge of schizophrenia. His existence is marked by a paradoxical desire to emulate and destroy the very essence of what he perceives as whiteness, revealing a profound mental dissonance. This duality is not unique to Bennett, but is symptomatic of individuals within this cohort who both hate and aspire to the privileges of whiteness, leading to an ongoing internal war that threatens mental stability. Their commitment to subversive ideologies serves as a pseudo-religious fervor, providing a veneer of sanity to what is, in essence, a life of constant turmoil. It allows them to maintain their public facade while pursuing their ultimate goal, the destruction of the system that has paradoxically elevated them. Rodney Bennett, like Ribeiro, presents as a figure of confusion and contradiction, an empty suit filled with rage and contempt for white individuals, yet dependent on the very system he seeks to dismantle. He is a stooge in the globalist narrative, living a life of luxury he did not create but actively tries to ruin. His ascent within the system he undermines marks him as a winner among his peers, garnering accolades for his part in escalating the internal decay of the institution he now leads. Rodney Bennett represents not merely a shift in leadership at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, but the culmination of a meticulously orchestrated subversion of academic integrity and cultural ethos. His tenure, described herein through various lenses, from racial manipulation to globalist infiltration, underscores a deliberate and calculated assault on the traditional values of higher education. Bennett's journey from beneficiary to architect of this transformation illustrates a coordinated effort by various subversive networks to invert the societal and academic norms, replacing merit with ideology and quality with quota. His dual persona, akin to a caricature of racial mimicry, serves as both a mask and a tool in the ongoing campaign to dismantle the very structures that once nurtured his own ascent. The University of Nebraska at Lincoln, under Bennett's stewardship, has become a case study in how institutions can be co-opted for agendas that are antithetical to their foundational principles. The so-called selection process that led to his appointment was nothing short of a theatrical performance, a mockery of governance and accountability, designed to ensure the installation of a figurehead for these subversive aims. This narrative of Bennett's infiltration and subsequent leadership at UNL reveals a broader, more sinister plot where education is repurposed as a tool for indoctrination rather than enlightenment. The university, once a beacon of learning and progress, now stands as a testament to how easily academic bastions can be transformed into theaters for political and ideological warfare. The legacy that Bennett leaves at UNL is one where the pursuit of knowledge has been supplanted by the pursuit of power, where diversity is leveraged not for inclusion but for division, and where the educational landscape is reshaped to serve the interests of an elite few over the many. The implications of such a transformation extend beyond the confines of academia, signaling a profound shift in cultural and intellectual discourse, one that future generations will have to contend with as they grapple with the consequences of this orchestrated subversion.